When I was 10 months old, 22 bullets shot through my father's car. It was 1977, the Ethiopian Revolution was well underway, and my father was Minister of Defense. The assassins assigned to kill him pulled up right next to him at a traffic light stop in Addis Ababa and unloaded a magazine of bullets. They sped off, confident they had killed their target. Quite miraculously, all 22 bullets missed him, and he survived the attack. I grew up hearing this story over and over again as a child. What it left me with is a realization that there are unforeseen life outcomes, way beyond logic. Shortly after the assassination attempt, concerned for our safety, my parents fled with my brother and me to America. We became part of the thousands of Ethiopian political refugees that were scattered all throughout the diaspora in the wake of revolution. We sought asylum from Lady Liberty, and we thankfully received it. This was my mother's passport photo when we arrived. I was 15 months, and my brother was 3 months. After what my parents had been through, very understandably, the life they hoped for me was one that was simple, secure, and rational. Politics was my father's passion, but it had proved to be too risky. My mother had worked for the Organization for African Unity, what is the present-day African Union, and she became a housewife. We all settled into a very different life in America. By the time I was 8 years old, we became US citizens, and Alexandria, Virginia became my hometown. It still is. Growing up in Virginia, the main expectation my parents had for me was to do well in school, and so I did. I worked hard, I got good grades, and I ended up going to a magnet high school. I would eventually graduate from Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology and enroll at Harvard. Clearly, the expectations that my parents had had for me took me far. When I got to college, I had great roommates and everything was going well until my junior year. I decided to study abroad in Kenya against my parents' wishes. I was an anthropology major, and I thought that I could use that to convince them, but I was wrong. My parents weren't pleased at the thought of me living in a rural Kenyan village. It didn't seem safe. The fear in my mother's voice was quite palpable. She thought I was making a huge mistake, and she wanted me to be scared out of it. That was the first time that fear reared its head in my life in the name of love, and I felt it. In hindsight, what I was feeling was the conflict that my parents' reactions had created between me and my gut. My gut was like, go to Kenya. My parents were like, not so much. I did it anyway, quite dramatically. I literally shaved off my hair, went to Samburu to live, experience the culture. I learned Swahili. This was the family that I was staying with for part of the time. I slept in the boma with them. I did chores with the other women. And at the end of those 6 months, I interned at a nutrition rehabilitation center where I was working with malnourished children and their mothers. Those set of experiences in Kenya radically changed what I thought about the world and who I wanted to become. It was a huge turning point in my life. I was leaving behind expectations that were not my own. It also put me on a path to study public health and medicine. And looking back on it, it was really the first time I had made a big decision based on my gut. And it had paid off big. It's quite possible that had I not gone to Kenya and listened to my parents, I wouldn't have become a doctor or studied medicine, and I would have missed out on a great deal of joy and the sense of purpose that has since driven my career. So today, what I want to talk to you about is the strange relationship between fear and love, and the ways this relationship limits possibilities for our lives by undermining our intuition. Though it may seem counterintuitive, one of the most profound forces shaping identity all around the world is fear disguised as love. This kind of fear is taught to you by people you love and respect. I'm talking about messages about fear that are imparted not by people who are trying to derail your life, but actually people who are often your greatest forms of support, your mentors, your partners, your friends. This makes it harder to recognize that it's fear operating. Later in my life, I would learn that the disagreement that I had with my parents was actually quite a mild version of this type of fear. The next time fear reared its head in my life in the name of love, it was ferocious because it drew its strength from the love and respect I had for a professional mentor during my primary care medical residency. I had just completed an ethnographic research project that was exploring the lives of Black HIV-positive patients in my clinic and why these women were dying at a higher rate. This work was the subject of a film I was making, and making that film was a hugely transformative experience during my residency because of the two women that were at the center of that story, Tara Stanley and Chevelle Wilson. These women taught me more about HIV than any medical textbook did and made me realize that writing academic papers for a narrow audience wasn't enough, at least for me, especially because they and others like them were the audience I cared most about, the audience I was trying to reach. So, with my very dear friend, Lacey Schwartz, we decided to start a production company called Truth Aid, with the goal of sharing more stories like Tara's and Chevelle's, stories that had so much to tell the world about truths we often ignored. When my residency mentor found out about this, he essentially tried to scare me out of making that decision. What was strange at the time was that the film had actually just helped me secure a very prestigious postdoc to begin a physician-scientist career. So by all indications, I hadn't dropped any balls in this pursuit. Quite the opposite. In fact, it was helping me advance my career. Nonetheless, my mentor was adamant. His message was basically, don't bother trying. He presented what my future would look like and wanted me to be scared out of making that decision. His exact words were, what are you gonna do? Start a company, then what? I didn't have an answer for him, so I just sat there and I listened. Though it was familiar, the tactic, fear in the name of love, I was not prepared for the force of the effect. It hit 10 times stronger because of the professional setting and because of the value I placed on his opinion. I deeply cared what he thought about me, and I really respected his opinions. More practically, at that stage in my career, I actually would eventually need a letter of recommendation from him. So there were very real implications for his thoughts, implications that weren't there when it came to my parents, and ultimately implications that were hard to ignore, especially because evaluation was how you advanced. At that moment, I could not articulate it for what it was, but it's the earliest memory I have of someone I love and respect in my professional life, not only trying to teach me fear, but also attacking my intuition. And it was working. His words penetrated deep into my psyche and laid seeds of doubt. For weeks, I thought, maybe he's right. Maybe I'm being naive. And that's when I realized sometimes when these messages of fear come our way, our arms are wide open, which makes them hit hard because they're being handed down to us by people we love and respect. Fear adorned with love is at its strongest in relationships where evaluation matters. So I seriously contemplated not going through with the production company, and then two things happened. First, I went to a conference where I ran into an old mentor. She could see I was conflicted. I told her what happened, and she sat me down and gave me some words to live by. She said, Mehret, as your mentor, the goal is not to become me. The goal is to become you. Her words did something. They helped me put some of the doubt to rest. So I immediately went to my parents and talked to them, what should I do? And that's when my mother shared with me my great-grandfather's story. His name was Zoga Hailu. I'm gonna spell it for you because he's one of my heroes and I want you to remember it. Zewgehailu. He was born in 1864 in a rural village in Ankober, Ethiopia. By the time he was 13 years old, his instincts told him there was more to the world than his village. So he decided to escape with a group of Arab merchants to the south of France. This is a picture of him in France. As you can imagine, his family wasn't pleased by this decision. In fact, an uncle he had met and who he had confided in really tried to convince him out of it, tried to scare him out of it. But Zoga didn't listen. He went with his gut, and as a result, he would go on to do incredible things. He lived in France for 20 years, and after he returned to Ethiopia, he was a liaison guide and interpreter between the first French delegation to Ethiopia and Emperor Menelik. He also helped establish the French embassy. And for all of this work, in 1895, he was awarded the Légion d'honneur, or Legion of Honor, which is the highest honor bestowed by the French state for excellence in military and civil service. He leveraged that status and those relationships to go on and purchase ammunitions for Ethiopia for the historic Battle of Adwa in 1896, where Ethiopia defeated Italian invaders in an epic upset. That battle was actually the largest military triumph of an African state over a European army in the 19th century and helped Ethiopia retain its independence during a time where colonial powers were literally carving the continent up. This is an actual receipt for the ammunition that my great-grandfather bought that I found in our family archives not so long ago. So, listening to his story, there is no way that his parents could have predicted what his life was going to become. It was way beyond logic. And hearing that fortified me. I allowed his legacy to guide me, and it helped me discard the doubt. It also allowed me to change as I left my own metaphorical village. After I had that internal shift, Lacey and I started that production company, and I'm very pleased to say we've since released 2 award-winning films that have had way more of an impact than I could have ever imagined. Making Diffret was also how I met my husband. He was the writer, director of the film, and I was the producer. We fell in love, and we got married. As luck would have it, while we were making the film, we found out we were pregnant, and we started to joke that we were having twins, the film and our son, Lucas. It was an incredibly dynamic time in our life because we were building life on life, and the partnership was a labor of love on so many levels. When our twins arrived, they got to know each other very quickly. Lucas loved film festivals, and he usually stole the show at the screenings. For the next year, my family and I traveled the globe, and Lucas grew up on the road. Diffret would go on to win 6 audience awards all around the world, and by the time Abu Dhabi Film Festival rolled around, I was 9 months pregnant again, and we would deliver my daughter, Mena, the same year we world premiered. It was almost too much, way beyond logic. The blessings were overflowing, and my heart was full. Similar to Kenya, making films had changed my life. Beyond the success and the accolades, it had brought me my husband and my kids, and the joy that comes with doing what you love with those you love. Sometimes I look back to the weeks following the meeting with my mentor, and I literally cringe at all I would have missed out on had I made a different decision. Had I decided to become my mentor instead of becoming me. So I share these stories with you today because I don't want you to miss out on the joy and the blessings that are on the other side of fear adorned with love. I've experienced what happens when you break free of expectations, and it makes me really sad when I see others who are trapped by them. I don't want that for you, and I don't want that for me. So, I'd like you to pause for a moment and consider, are there people in your life who are teaching you fear? Perhaps with the best of intentions, but fear nonetheless. And if so, what has that impact been in your life and who you've become? I have one more story for you. Recently, a bunch of my close peers reached various milestones, like turning 40 and being partner at a law firm, and it sparked this conversation amongst us, a collective taking stock of where we were at. I was really surprised by what I learned. A large proportion of highly educated people I know spend a great deal of time doing what they don't want to do. And these are some of the smartest, most powerful, and resourceful people I knew. What was particularly interesting was that no one was doing anything about it. And the bar we were using was actually low. It wasn't, have you find your passion in life or your purpose. It was something much more simple like, are you at ease? And to put a finer point on it, how did being miserable become the default? The answer lies in the insidious ways that fear adorned with love gently nudges us over time to prioritize other people's expectations for our lives over our own. Chipping away at the faith we have in ourselves and our intuition until we believe the inner voice is the distraction. When the world convinces us that our inner voices are a distraction, fear becomes a way of life. It becomes the only way we know how to live, and it leaves us trapped, stuck in a cycle where we're constantly convincing ourselves that what we're doing is enough or who we are is what we want, when it's clearly not. The end result of all of this is that joy begins to disappear from our lives. So, how do we change this? How can we let go of the expectations that confine us to our respective Ethiopian villages, whatever that might mean for you, instead of leaving them? I believe the first step is to trust your intuition, strengthen it, protect it when it's under assault. Albert Einstein said, "The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant." We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. I can't say it any better. The point is, honor the gift that is within you. The second step is to be willing to change. And I get it, it's scary, but here's the irony even in that. Even if we're trapped by fear and expectations, we are all constantly changing. There's nothing fixed about who we are. We all have shifting identities that we toggle every day. Who we are at work to our boss is different than who we are to our partners at home, is different than who we are with our friends. So if we're all already shifting who we are constantly for others, why not shift who we are for ourselves? And lastly, once you've grabbed a hold of how the outside world is imposing fear on you, it's really important that you don't do it to others. 2 scenarios to look out for. The first is the parent-child relationship. As a mother of 3 children, I think about this one all the time. How can I make sure I'm not projecting my fear onto my kids? I don't have an answer for you, but I actually think it's more important to ask the question. The second scenario involves patriotism. It's really important we don't instill fear in others in the name of loving this country. Those 2 things don't go hand in hand. Reducing America's greatness to a zero-sum game that's driven by fear is just not what this country is about, nor is it a just expression of love. So, my message for you is, stop prioritizing other people's expectations for your life over your own. Discard that noise, and it will become abundantly clear that your life has unlimited opportunities available to you if you are willing to honor your intuition. What might leaving your village mean for you? Thank you.